Edmund Emil Kemper III was born December 18, 1948, in Burbank, California. His arrival was ordinary, but his story would become one of the most unsettling portraits of intelligence turned toward darkness that American crime has ever produced. He was the middle child and only son in a house filled with tension and resentment. His father, Edmund Sr., had served bravely in World War II and later tested nuclear weapons in the Pacific. When he came home to suburban California, he found no comfort in his family. His wife Clarnell was volatile, sharp-tongued, and consumed by bitterness. She drank heavily, belittled her husband, and took her frustration out on her son. As a child, Edmund was unusually large. By the time he was 10 years old, he was already over 5 feet tall. By 15, he would tower at 6'9". His size made him seem older than he was, which frightened some of the adults around him. But behind those pale blue eyes was not strength or confidence, it was pain. He was quiet and observant, often lost in his imagination. His mother thought he was strange and often called him names that stuck in his mind for life. She would remind him that no woman would ever love him, that he was too awkward, too ugly, too much like his father. When the family broke apart, the damage deepened. His parents divorced when he was just 14. His father left the state and remarried, leaving Edmund behind in Montana with Clarnell. The resentment that had simmered for years boiled over. Clarnell locked him in the basement at night, afraid he might harm his sisters. The basement was cold and unlit, a place where spiders crawled and rats chewed. Edmund later described hearing their scratching in the dark as he lay awake for hours. The isolation warped him. He built a fantasy life to survive, one filled with control and revenge. By 10 years old, he had already acted on violent impulses. He buried his pet cat alive, later digging it up to decapitate it. He kept the head as a trophy. When his mother found out, she was horrified but didn't seek help. Instead, she mocked him for being cruel and strange. A few years later, he repeated the act with another cat, this time slicing it to pieces and hiding it in his closet until the smell gave him away. These were the early signs of what professionals later called a compulsion for possession. Despite these behaviors, he was smart, very smart. His IQ would later be measured as one of the highest among known violent offenders, ranging from 136 to 145. His intelligence allowed him to manipulate teachers, relatives, and later even trained psychiatrists. But at home, his intelligence only made his mother despise him more. At 15, Kemper had reached a breaking point. On August 27, 1964, he had an argument with his grandmother, Maud Kemper, at her home in rural North Fork, California. She told him to stop killing birds with his rifle. He turned that same rifle on her, shooting her in the back of the head as she sat at the kitchen table. Then, when his grandfather returned from buying groceries, Edmund shot him too. When questioned later, he said he killed his grandmother to see what it felt like, and he killed his grandfather so he wouldn't have to see what he'd done. He calmly called his mother and told her what happened. She told him to call the police. He did exactly that. At just 15 years old, Edmund was arrested and sent to Atascadero State Hospital for the criminally insane. At Atascadero, doctors discovered something disturbing. He was polite, intelligent, and compliant. He seemed remorseful, articulate, and self-aware. One doctor even called him a model patient. He memorized psychiatric evaluations and learned how to respond in ways that made him look rehabilitated. He studied psychological tests and even administered them to other patients. Behind the calm exterior was a teenager learning how to deceive the system. By the time he was 21, psychiatrists recommended his release. They claimed he no longer posed a danger to society. On December 18, 1969, he walked out of Atascadero with a clean record, a new start, and a sharpened understanding of human psychology. The state released him directly into the care of a person who fueled his hatred the most, his mother. Clarnell was now working as an administrative assistant at the University of California, Santa Cruz. She lived in Aptos, near the campus, and reluctantly allowed her son to stay with her. Kemper tried to live normally. He took community college classes, applied to become a police officer, and socialized with officers at a bar called the Jury Room. They called him Big Ed. He joked with them, bought them drinks, and learned how police thought. But rejection followed him everywhere. His application to the force was denied because of his enormous size. Women ignored him. His mother constantly reminded him he was worthless. He would later say she would sit up late at night drinking, screaming at him for being a burden. In 1972, his fantasies returned. He began picking up female hitchhikers, first as practice. He would drive them safely to their destinations, earning trust. Then came the turning point. In May of that year, he picked up 2 Fresno State students, Mary Ann Pace and Anita Luchessa. They never made it to their destination. He brought them to a secluded area, attacked them, and later dismembered their bodies. He dumped their remains in the mountains near Santa Cruz. From there, the killings continued. In September, he picked up 15-year-old Aiko Ku, who had missed her bus. He strangled her and kept her body overnight. The next year, he killed Cindy Shaw, and in February 1973, Rosalind Thorpe and Alice Liu. Each time, he refined his process. He would lure them into his car, pull over on deserted roads, and attack with chilling precision. Kemper took trophies from his victims, often photographing them or keeping body parts. He admitted to engaging in acts of necrophilia. He once said, "When I killed girls like these, it was like possessing them. I felt like they were mine." His hatred of women, especially his mother, shaped every act. But his crimes didn't end with strangers. In April 1973, after an argument with his mother, Kemper struck her with a hammer while she slept. He slit her throat and decapitated her, then used her severed head for target practice. He later stuffed her larynx into the garbage disposal, saying the machine rejected it just as the world had rejected her voice. Afterward, he called his mother's friend Sally Hallett and invited her over. He strangled her as well, attempting to create a cover story that his mother and Sally had gone out of town together. Then he left town, driving east for days before finally stopping at a phone booth in Pueblo, Colorado. There he called the police and confessed. At first they didn't believe him. He had to convince them to come and arrest him. In interviews after his capture, Kemper spoke with chilling composure. He described his crimes with no visible emotion, only logic. FBI agents Robert Ressler and John Douglas would later use him as one of the first subjects in the development of modern criminal profiling. Kemper described his motives in detail, explaining how fantasies had merged with rage toward his mother. In one recorded interview, he said she would sit up late talking to me for hours, telling me how worthless I was, and then she wondered why I hated women. He described killing her as the one thing that finally made me feel free. At trial, his defense team argued insanity, but Kemper himself disagreed. He told the jury he was fully aware of what he had done. He was found guilty on 8 counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even behind bars, his intelligence set him apart. At Vacaville State Prison, he narrated thousands of audiobooks for the blind, including classics like Flowers in the Attic and The Glass Key. He became a trusted inmate, used by psychologists as an example of organized intelligence. But that intelligence was also his curse. He once said, "I'm not a lizard. I'm not from under a rock. I'm a human being, and yet I committed these acts. It's worse than being a monster because I understand what I've done." In interviews with FBI profilers, he provided invaluable insight into criminal psychology. He explained how each murder was rehearsal for killing his mother. "Every girl I killed was her," he said flatly, "and she always came back." Over the years, Kemper's story became part of the foundation for modern profiling. Agents studied his ability to control impulses for long periods and then explode with violence. He was a paradox, empathetic yet remorseless, articulate yet perverse. Now in his 70s, confined to a wheelchair, he remains at the California Medical Facility. He rarely gives interviews, though he's known to keep track of how often his name appears in documentaries and books. His story continues to fascinate psychologists because it challenges every easy explanation of evil. Intelligence did not make him better. Therapy did not cure him. Affection did not reach him. What made Edmund Kemper so terrifying wasn't only the violence of his crimes, but the calm after them. He didn't run, he didn't hide, he confessed. He understood himself better than anyone ever could, and he used that understanding to destroy. This has been another episode of Dark Minds, a segment on Midnight Verdict where we examine the darkest corners of the human psyche. All facts, no fluff. Like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the minds that redefine horror itself.